foundations of a capital at the dawn of the 18th century. At the opening of the 1700s, Paris stands as the unquestioned heart of France, a city of stone, river, and restless ambition. From above, it spreads along the winding curve of the Seine, its bridges stitching together the left bank's learning, the right bank's commerce, and the Isle de la Cité's ancient authority. Church towers and palace roofs dominate the skyline, their silhouettes rising through morning mist and coal smoke. Paris is already one of Europe's largest cities, home to more than 500,000 souls, and every year more arrive, drawn by power, opportunity, or simple survival. Politically, the century begins in the long shadow of Louis XIV. Though the Sun King resides primarily at Versailles, his presence is everywhere in Paris. Royal edicts echo through law courts, taxes are collected in his name, and monuments glorify his reign. Paris is not the seat of the monarchy, but it is the nerve center of administration, finance, and culture. Clerks, lawyers, and royal officials fill its narrow streets, their work sustaining a centralized state unlike any France has known before. The city's geography shapes daily life. The Seine is Paris's lifeline, carrying grain, firewood, wine, and stone into the capital. Along its banks, washerwomen beat clothes against smooth rocks while barges creak under heavy cargo. Markets cluster near the river, especially at Les Halles, where dawn brings the smell of fish, blood, straw, and damp earth. Here, the city feeds itself, loudly and chaotically, as merchants shout prices and carts clog the streets. Yet Paris is not a clean or orderly place. Many streets remain unpaved, turning to mud in rain and dust in summer. Open sewers run along the center of roads, carrying waste toward the river. At night, darkness dominates, broken only by lanterns hung outside select buildings. The air is thick with smoke from hearths and workshops, with the constant scent of human and animal presence. This is a city lived in intensely, physically, and without pause. Social life unfolds in layers. Nobles inhabit grand townhouses near the Marais or Saint-Germain, while artisans crowd into cramped dwellings above their shops. Students roam the Latin Quarter, arguing philosophy beneath ancient walls. Churches punctuate neighborhoods, marking time with bells that regulate work, prayer, and rest. Religion remains central, shaping both belief and routine, even as new ideas quietly begin to circulate. Beneath Paris's surface calm, tensions are already forming. The cost of bread rises unpredictably, taxes press heavily on the poor, and whispers of discontent travel from tavern to workshop. The city's brilliance rests on fragile foundations. Paris enters the 18th century proud, crowded, and powerful, but also vulnerable, balancing tradition against forces it does not yet fully understand. The city in motion, society, inequality, and pressure. As the century advances, Paris becomes a city in constant motion, defined by stark contrasts. Wealth and poverty exist side by side, often separated by nothing more than a wall or a doorway. In elegant salons, philosophers debate reason, nature, and liberty beneath painted ceilings, while just outside, beggars cluster near church steps, hopping for alms. This closeness sharpens awareness and resentment. Daily labor defines most lives. Artisans work long hours in guild-regulated trades. Bakers, cobblers, printers, tailors, and metalworkers fill the streets with sound and purpose. Apprentices sleep in workshops, rising before dawn to stoke fires or prepare tools. Women work as seamstresses, laundresses, servants, and market sellers, their labor essential yet undervalued. Children contribute early, carrying goods or running errands through streets they learn to navigate instinctively. Power flows downward from the crown but is enforced locally. Police patrol neighborhoods, monitoring taverns and tracking dissent. Censorship restricts printing, yet pamphlets circulate nonetheless, passed hand to hand. Paris becomes the intellectual engine of Europe, as Enlightenment ideas challenge traditional authority. Writers and thinkers question absolute monarchy, religious intolerance, and inherited privilege. These ideas spread quietly at first, then with increasing confidence. Religion remains influential, but its authority is no longer unchallenged. Churches still shape community life, yet skepticism grows among the educated classes. Meanwhile, charitable institutions struggle to manage the city's poor, as population growth outpaces resources. Hospitals overflow, and prisons fill with debtors and petty offenders. Hunger becomes a recurring threat, especially in harsh winters when grain shipments falter. War also shapes the city, even when fought far from its streets. Conflicts strain the treasury, increase taxation, and drive up prices. Veterans return injured or unemployed, adding to the city's burden. Paris feels these pressures acutely, absorbing the consequences of imperial ambition without sharing equally in its rewards. Despite hardship, Paris thrives culturally. Theaters draw crowds hungry for drama and satire. Coffee houses become centers of discussion, where news, rumor, and philosophy blend freely. Music spills from private gatherings, while public festivals momentarily dissolve social boundaries. These shared experiences create a sense of collective identity, Paris as more than a city, but a voice. Yet beneath this vibrancy, anger simmers. The gap between those who rule and those who endure widens. The city listens, remembers, and waits. Paris is learning to see itself not only as the king's capital, but as a force capable of judgment. Crisis, revolution, and the city that remade history. By the late 18th century, Paris stands at its peak and its breaking point. The city has grown larger, louder, and more self-aware. Enlightenment ideals have taken root, and expectations have changed. People no longer accept suffering as inevitable or authority as unquestionable. When bread prices soar and reforms fail, frustration turns into action. The streets that once carried carts and crowds now carry revolution. Paris becomes the stage on which history turns. Neighborhoods organize, voices unite, and symbols of royal power are challenged openly. The city's physical spaces, its squares, bridges, and prisons, become sites of confrontation. Paris no longer merely reflects national crisis, it drives it. The fall of old institutions transforms the city profoundly. Power shifts from palace to street, from inherited title to popular will. Violence and hope coexist, reshaping Paris at every level. Monuments change meaning, churches are repurposed, and names of streets and districts are rewritten to match new ideals. The city becomes a living experiment in political possibility. The consequences are lasting. Paris emerges not just altered, but defined by this moment. It becomes the symbolic heart of revolution, influencing movements far beyond France. Ideas born or sharpened in its salons and alleyways travel across borders, inspiring change and fear in equal measure. As the century closes, Paris stands transformed, scarred, energized, and unforgettable. It is no longer simply the capital of a kingdom, but a city that has demonstrated the power of collective action. The Paris of the 1700s leaves behind more than buildings and memories. It leaves a legacy of challenge, creativity, and defiance that continues to shape the modern world. From its muddy streets to its revolutionary heights, 18th century Paris is not merely a place in history. It is a turning point, where a city learned its own strength and changed the course of the world.